Welcome to this episode of the Smart Leaders Sell podcast. I'm Jessica Lorimer, sales coach and leadership expert, and I am really excited to dig down into today's episode. Okay, potties, it is Monday, and as promised, I'm here to talk about a topic that's very, very close to my heart. It's all about pricing today. Now, this is one that has been on my mind to record for a while. I get emails into my inbox every week about pricing. I get questions about it through Messenger, on Instagram. Do you even call that Instagram Messenger? Or am I the loser that's like getting it wrong? Is it DMs? Are people sliding into my DMs? How millennial is that? But pricing is one of those things that I think in the sales world, sales coaches just get a lot of questions about pricing, how to price. Is there really an instance to show that having a 7 on the end will make somebody purchase something more than if it has a 5 or a 0 or any other number? Simple answer, no. It's just a no. Just price the stuff at whatever it's worth. But today's episode is about pricing. It's about how you can make some decisions about pricing, and it's about what's going on with our pricing culture and how you can actually assess whether you are being part of the responsible pricing crowd and selling assertively and confidently in your pricing, or whether you are contributing to some of the, do we say evils? Like the evils of premium pricing and under delivering. Okay, so that's what we're going to be talking about today. How can you actually set your prices so that you can feel good, so that your ideal clients can actually purchase from you, why there are some myths around pricing, what those myths are, and how you can actually price accordingly. Now, there are some other exciting things in the works at the moment. So just before I dig into today's episode, if you listened to the episode a couple of weeks ago on selling to corporates and you were interested in learning more about selling to corporate companies, then this week is a very exciting one, because in just 2 days' time, on Wednesday, live on iTunes goes the brand new podcast, Selling to Corporates. What a name. I know you're all sat there thinking, oh my goodness, Jess, how original. How did you come up with that? And, maybe on that podcast, I will tell you. But in all seriousness, if you are interested in selling to corporate companies and you want to be landing bigger contracts, you want to be maximizing your revenue, you want to know how to even proactively start pitching corporate companies, how you can even get business from them, then once a month, I am going to be releasing a brand new episode on that podcast, Selling to Corporates. So you can go over to iTunes and type in Selling to Corporates. You'll be able to find a sneak peek intro over there to give you an overview about what that podcast is going to be about, what you're going to learn from that. But on Wednesday this week, it goes live. So if you are interested in selling to corporates, make sure that you go and check that out on iTunes on Wednesday. And if you are not on the email list for it yet, if you're not on the wait list and you think, oh my goodness, I know that Wednesday is going to come around and I'm going to forget about it, make sure you click the link in the show notes and you can head over to the website. You can get on a wait list just to be told as soon as that first episode goes live on iTunes, barring all tech issues. So if you could also cross your fingers to the tech gods and goddesses and whatever else that they've got up there, that would be awesome. But let's crack on with this episode. Let's talk about pricing and let's really dig into what is going on. Like, what the heck is going on with pricing at the moment? So this is an interesting one, and I've talked to many people, colleagues, peers, clients, mentors over the years about pricing. It's one of the things that really, it induces a rage like no other in me on occasion. And maybe it's not rage, maybe that's not the right word, maybe passion is the right word for it. But I've had so many conversations, particularly over the last 5 years of being an online business owner, of running my own business, and in being part of the sales coaching space. Like I say, the majority of questions that sales coaches get are about pricing and how to price and how you can feel good about pricing and how you can avoid undercharging and overcharging. And so actually, it's one of those topics that seems to be not just on my brain a lot, but on everybody's lips a lot. And I had a couple of conversations with some colleagues recently. When I say recently, we all know, I mean in the last 3-4 months. And I was talking to a few friends of mine who also run online businesses and who were also interested in what I call the charging crisis. And I do think that there is a crisis when it comes to pricing at the moment, because people are so focused on hitting this kind of 6-figure revenue goal that they forget about basics like delivery, quality, making sure that, they've actually got decent payment processes in place, and of course, making the buying experience a positive one for the customer. And so that's what I want to dig into on this episode is, what are we doing that is contributing to this charging crisis? Whether that's charging too much, whether it's charging too little, or whether it's not really doing anything to change the current existence of our own sales processes and how we can actually improve and make them better for our clients. So let's start with this. I'm going to call it myth number 1. I'm not saying that there are a bunch of other myths, but myth number 1 is this whole charge what you're worth. I do have to have a little laugh there. Charge what you're worth. Now, I'm going to be honest. I worked in corporate sales for, a decade. And at no point ever did anybody ever say to me, Jess, you are worth what we charge you out for. And I was on good day rates. I was, signing some incredibly high margin deals. I was doing a lot, but nobody ever tied my self-worth to the amount that I was being charged out for or that I was being paid. It wasn't until I entered the online space where this phrase became like a mantra to everybody. And it's on every single Instagram feed. Charge what you're worth, charge what you're worth. And most people validate that by being like, oh, I have 0 experience, but I'm going to charge like 100 grand for somebody to learn how to build a business from me. And I'm like, what? And it's become this weird thing. The irony for me around charge what you're worth is that the people who do actually charge what they're worth don't do it for years and years and years. And they're frequently the ones who undercharge from the beginning because they want to put their reps in. And the people who are, air quotes, charging what they're worth are usually the people who end up being these baby business coaches who are like, oh my goodness, all you need to do is get a client, get them to pay you 5 grand, and then, get 3 or 4 of them, and then go out and teach everybody how to make a 20K month. And that's how the phrase has come to be perpetuated or bandied around the internet. And that really frustrates me for 2 reasons. 1, lack of experience and, contributing to a high price, low quality delivery model, but also this idea that, what you charge is directly impacting your self-worth, your personal value as a human being. And that's not true. That isn't true. And I want to put that out here right at the beginning. In fact, it's so interesting to me because, back in my corporate days, I'd been from selling products to services to people, recruitment, not trafficking. Always feel like I need to specify that. And it's always one of those awkward jokes where I'm like, that could really gain or lose followers. But I sold a lot of things at a lot of different price points. And I remember back in the day starting out for a global jewelry firm that I worked for. And we used to sell these earrings. And I swear to God, if you've ever been to any jewelry store that caters to the, let's say 16 to 25 market, you'll have seen what we call creoles, okay? And then these big gold hoopy things with they've got like a straight line where you do them up. And if you are a guy, you have definitely seen a girl wearing creoles, usually in their teen years, I'm going to say between 16 and 19. And it's like the bigger the better, right? And so they have these massive hoops dangling down from their ears. The only way I can explain it or give you a good example is to point you in the direction of that TV show, Gavin and Stacey. Anyone remember that? If you do, you will know that the character played by Sheridan Smith, she wears these like massive, massive creoles. And it's that kind of fashion trend. Anyway, about, let's say 10, 12 years ago, these were super popular, like I say, with this 16 to 19-year-old crowd. And the jewelry firm that I worked for, we recognized pretty quickly that these kids were buying them in bulk. Because obviously, if you buy earrings like that, you're wearing them all the time. They've got to be bigger all the time. You're taking them out all the time. They're doing PE at school and they're going out and they're going for a run, or they're doing things with their friends that require earrings not to be in. And so they would lose them. And so we started producing like a high volume of these earrings, seriously high volume, for $9.99 a pair. And we're talking gold earrings, $9.99. And obviously the bigger the hoops, the bigger the price. We are looking at this with sort of like 2010 pricing on it, but still $9.99 for a pair of gold earrings that we knew that we could sell in bulk, that we knew every single week when we looked at our sales targets. And I would joke about it with my sales teams. I'd be like, okay, your sales target today is £1,000, for example. How many pairs of creoles do you need to sell? And we would joke about it because we were selling them in such high volume. These $9.99 earrings, and they went from, $9.99 to about $17.99 or something. They weren't expensive, but you'd sell hundreds. Like over the course of a weekend, you would sell hundreds of these pairs of massive hooped earrings, and they were ugly. Let's face it, they were gross. Like most of the fashion trends from the late 90s, early 2000s, they weren't pretty. I don't know if teenagers these days are still wearing them because I don't really keep up with it so much. But I would imagine that, if they haven't died a death, there are kids out there still thinking, the bigger the better. If my earrings are not the same size as my head, I don't want to know. Also relevant at this point to note that I have my ears pierced, never wear earrings. I'm not sure whether the creoles have scarred me for life. But the point is, we were selling gold at a ridiculous price. It's super, super cheap. Not gold plate, actual gold earrings, 9 carat, ready to go. And so nobody ever said to me, oh, because you sell $9.99 earrings, you're worth less as a person. Nobody ever said to me, oh, because you've upgraded and those earrings have gone from $9.99 to $14.99, hella inflation, that suddenly you're worth more. And as I started moving through the corporate sales world, again, it was never something I heard, this charge what you're worth. What was talked about was charge based on your experience. Charge based on quality, charge based on how good you are at your job. And that was something that I saw consistently across my corporate sales days, both in a sales environment and other places in the corporate workforce. We would happily pay more for somebody who was really good at their job and could get it done in less time. But we didn't want to pay an intern the same amount. If we were looking for an accountant, and we could get someone with 10 years experience and we were paying them 50 grand a year and they could do the entire job. And then an intern came in and said, oh, I've got 2 weeks out of uni. And, I've got my, CPA accreditation or qualification, but I'd also like 50 grand. We'd have laughed and sent them away. But that's not what we do in the online space. And that's what's become so interesting. And the interesting thing for me has become that what we've seen is a rise in the lack of confidence in pricing from people who actually have really, really solid experience. And I see a lot of people who come out of the corporate work world and, they have phenomenal experience and they have phenomenal level of expertise, but they don't want to charge for it because they feel like they have to put their reps in again in the online space and they have to, lower the pricing. And then we see this rise of people who are supremely underqualified. And we've talked about this on the podcast before, this low barrier to entry, have only ever, sold Tupperware. It sounds really derogatory when I say it like that. It's not meant that way, and I'm not being flippant by any means, but don't call yourself a business coach if all you've ever done is work Tupperware parties. Like, it's not cool and it's not okay. And you don't, at that level of expertise, get to charge the same amount as somebody who has 10, 15, 20 years experience and who has a proven background, a solid history and great results behind them. So you might be thinking, well, Jess, this sounds a bit negative. Like, hang on a minute. Am I listening to this podcast and being told in no uncertain terms I should be super cheap? And the answer is no, of course not. We all know that I preach premium pricing first. But here's the big but. Also got to have high quality delivery. And this is what I'm not seeing online. This is what I'm not seeing being prioritized by people who are charging premium prices. In fact, we seem to have moved away from high quality experiences altogether, and that has become frustrating, particularly over the last few months. And I've had experiences with this, and I have joined various programs and masterminds and high level investment opportunities that actually, the higher the amount I've paid, the worse the service is, right? Let's just take a step back and just think about that. The higher the amount I've paid, the worse the experience has been. Now, this could be a very cynical thought of mine, but what has become really pervasive in the world of pricing is this idea that less is more, okay? If you're driving along in your car, please, if you're resonating with what I'm saying, don't do prayer hands right now at the wheel. Wait until you get home. Send me an email about it. But I just want to point out, it's not okay And it isn't okay when we talk about pricing, when we talk about premium pricing, for people simply to add additional services to their businesses that they are either unqualified to deliver or that they're doing just for the money. And we've seen a rise in this over the last few years. You know, I think masterminds have definitely become the new thing, right? Everyone's like, I need to add an extra 100 grand to my bottom line. I know, I'm just going to set up a mastermind. Whoop. Now I have a mastermind, so you can be like, Jess, that is a bias. And I can, 100% say that the mastermind is something that I love running, that I absolutely adore running. I love being invested in my mastermind participants. They get great results. It's not a cheap product or service, okay? It's not cheap. However, my investment in it is not cheap. The amount of time and energy I spend there is not cheap. The amount of resources that they have access to, not cheap. The amount of energy and expertise that goes into coordinating and running and facilitating that experience is not cheap. And so whilst they might not be paying for, 35 worksheets every month, they're paying for true expertise, true guidance, true strategy, things that actually work, a network of people that they can communicate with, that they can contact, that they can support and be supported by, who are at their level. And most importantly, that they can use to network themselves. And in fact, most people in most of my programs, Mastermind, my private membership, Evolve, they are all working with other people that they meet within that network. And the reason is that they can trust those people, that they know them, that they see the good, the bad, everything in between. And they get a really good handle on, can that person help me, honestly, or not? But what we're seeing in the marketplace is that people are spouting, charge what you're worth, charge £1 zillion for something. And then less is more. So charge all this money, but actually give them less. And that really grinds my gears. All right. This whole less is more. As a business owner and as somebody who also wants a life, I get it. I love not being at work. All right. And I have to say that I have to be honest about that, because I think there are so many people who say you have to get up every day and you have to really love what you do and blah, blah, blah. And I do. I love what I do. I love my client. I love nothing more than sitting on 10 hours worth of client calls. I'm just like, oh, this is just, the adrenaline's rushing and I'm excited about strategy and I get to put together new plans and I'm in my element. But I also love not working, sitting at home, watching Netflix, eating chips, meatballs, anything that Sam has left. And I don't ever want to have an imbalanced business and life, right? So, I completely agree that I cannot do one-to-one in every single program I run. It's not physically possible. There is not enough of me. There is not enough time in my diary. But it doesn't mean that I can't provide a high quality experience in everything I do. It doesn't mean that I can't make things feel like I'm there, even when I'm not, But what we're seeing is this rise in the marketplace of, in order to have a 6-figure, multi-6-figure, 7-figure business, you have to have a certain type of ecosystem, for want of a better word. You have to have a podcast or a book, and then you have to have a membership, and then you have to have a group program that's more expensive, and then you have to have an intensive, and then you have to have, at the very top, a mastermind. And you don't really do that much with any of the people at the top, because you just they're paying you the money, and it's like osmosis. You just hope that they will, get results because of just being in your presence. And that's not what we should be perpetuating, right? That's not okay. That's not fair. And when we talk about pricing and when we talk about how to price, people get so caught up on the, should I end it with a 7 or a 9? And they don't think about, well, what's the quality of the experience I'm providing? What level of transformation am I actually giving somebody? How is this impacting, or how does this have the potential to impact the other areas of their lives that are important? Instead, they're just like, charging what I'm worth. I'm worth £1 million, baby. And, less is more. Buy this thing. It's going to cost you a ton of money and I'm barely going to show up. And that's okay, because I'm leading by example and you can do it too. And it just, I don't know, it puts a little bit of sick in my mouth, if I'm honest, because I think, well, hang on a minute. This pricing culture, this charging crisis is leading to us letting people settle for low results. Okay. It's letting people settle for the fact they're going to pay out lots of money and they're going to get burned. And I don't think that's okay. I'm very, very anti that, in case that hasn't come across just yet in this episode. I'm very anti that. I think charging what you are worth is a valid statement. Charging what you are worth is not an Instagram mantra to be lived by. And that's what we need to change. We need to start focusing more on experience, on transformation, on quality when we're looking at our pricing structure, rather than, if I sell one of these at 10K, I don't have to work for the rest of the month. That's what we want to move away from. We want to have this responsibility to our clients to help them get the very best results that they can. And obviously, there are factors that we cannot control. I can't control it if a client doesn't do the work. I can do everything that I possibly can to help them get there. I can keep them accountable. I can send them emails. I can, have a chat with them on calls. I can coach them through the experience. I can coach them through resistance. But ultimately, if they're not going to do the work, I can't make them. I cannot sit at their desk and force feed them strategy until it's coming out their eyeballs and they're just doing the work and loving it, But we do have to start thinking about how we are charging and about how quickly that can change. So one of my favorite pricing stories is the one about the plumber. And if you've heard it before, forgive me, it takes like 30 seconds to tell, so I am going to go with it. But one of my favorite pricing stories came out of corporate. And when I was in the corporate world, I think it was a manager or a director of mine who told me this. And he was like, this is how you want to live. When it comes to pricing, this is always what you need to think of. And it's really stuck with me. So the story goes that there is a woman and she has a plumbing issue. Okay, so she's in her kitchen. There is water spewing all over the floor. It's a nightmare. And she tries everything that she can. She puts a towel in the hole. She tries turning some screws around to see if the water will go away. She looks underneath the kitchen sink to see if it's spurting out from there, and it's not. And she can't figure it out, but she spends a good 2 hours doing it and trying. And her floor, as a result, is soaked. She's got lake water in her kitchen, and she's frustrated and tired and pretty hacked off. So she decides to call a plumber. And the plumber comes out within, let's say, 35 minutes. And he gets there and he looks at it and he says, okay, I can see what's going on here. And he takes one hammer out of his bag and he just taps the wall and the water stops. And she says, you're amazing. That is incredible. Oh my goodness, this is the best thing. I'm so glad I called you. And he said, great, that'll be £750, please. And she says, what? £750? But all you did was walk in and hit the wall. And he says, you're not paying me to hit the wall. You're paying me for knowing where to hit. And that stuck with me for years. It's that idea, you're not paying somebody for the time that they're spending giving you the strategy or, creating the PDF or whatever. You're paying them for the expertise that they have gained, the time that they save you, and the transformation that they get you in a quicker way than somebody else. So, let's use a real life example. A client of mine, Lisa Johnson, she provided an amazing testimonial for me recently, and I hugely appreciate it. But she came and did a VIP day with me in January. Now, my VIP days are not inexpensive. They are high level, high strategy days that give you immediately actionable points to help you go away and create immediate income. And Lisa approached me and said, would I mind doing one of these VIP days with her? And I was like, of course, I would love to. What are your achievables? And so she came to me and she wanted to generate some instant revenue, but didn't necessarily want to add more workload. And so I gave her some immediate strategies for using her existing audience, for using products and services that she already had to generate this revenue that she wanted to make. Now, it's been 5 months since our session, and Lisa has gone on to have 3 six-figure plus launches in that time. So that's over £300,000 because she charges in pounds from one day. It's a huge return on investment. And it's one of the reasons that I can charge a premium price for my intensives. Because if we look at the money that Lisa spent to be part of the intensive and to actually do it, and the ROI, it's in the thousands of %. Okay. It's expertise. It's not me hitting a spot in the wall and making the water stop. It is the years of strategy, the years of change, the years of experience that help put together something, help troubleshoot issues, help manage a client go from point A to point B in a very rapid way. And that's something we all have. We all have this ability to help a client transform, and we should all charge for that experience. All right. I'm not saying that, my VIP days are priced at the rate that they should be. Absolutely not. I do so few of them these days that I do them for enjoyment. And that's the thing. I do them because twice a quarter, it's really nice for me to sit down with somebody for a day for, 5-6 hours and really map out what their next 3 to 6 months in business is going to look like, and what they can achieve, and how they can do that, and how they can make the most money possible in the shortest period of time. But I'm okay with that. I'm okay with charging what I'm worth for that because I have the results to back it up. And this is the thing, when we're looking at pricing and we're looking at this idea of experience, if you have less experience in a certain industry, you're going to have to charge a lower rate to begin with. It doesn't mean it's going to stay there. I remember back when I was starting out with VIP intensives, I used to charge £2,000 for a day. It was £2,000 and they'd get 30 days of support afterwards, 2 follow-up calls plus the day. Now my day intensives are over £7,000, but the results are phenomenal. And it goes up, and it will go up, it will go up to £10,000 in September because Ali keeps shouting at me about it. When you're being coached by somebody and they're saying, you need to raise that because it's a ridiculous price, you listen, you do the work. It is that kind of thing. So when you're looking at your own experience, be really honest about it. What is my experience? Do I have experience that lends weight to this, even if it's not in the online world? And again, this is a really common issue when it comes to pricing, is that people price based on the experience they have in the online space as they start their business, not the experience that's led them to that point. So for example, lots of VAs come out of the corporate world. They're, amazing executive assistants or personal assistants. They've got a lot of expertise in that area, but they don't charge for it when they get into the online space because they get into like pricing war with everybody else. And that's unfortunate. Know what your skill set is, know what you're charging for, and let your expertise talk for itself. One of the reasons that I charge in the way that I do is that, yes, okay, my services may be more expensive than other people's. The upside though is that they get results a lot quicker. So generally, when people are coming in and they're doing something like cash creation, they're going from 0 to 60 in 6 weeks. They're making immediate revenue in 6 weeks. And that's not something that every other sales coach has the skill or the ability to do. And so, yes, absolutely, I charge a premium for it, but people get great results and they get a great ROI. So that pricing is warranted. If I was, if I decided tomorrow that I wanted to be a health coach, could I charge somebody the same amount for a day intensive of health coaching as I could as a day intensive of sales coaching? No, not because people won't pay for health coaching, but because I have zero experience. I don't have the qualifications. I don't know anything about it. It would be irresponsible of me, deeply irresponsible of me, to say that I could help somebody to lose weight or increase their cardio fitness or, increase their fertility through nutrition, or because I don't have those skills. I don't know how to do that. I'm not qualified to do that. I'm not certified to do that. I don't understand how to troubleshoot those things. Maybe I have a base level of awareness on some of them because I've had clients that do those things. Maybe I could talk a good game even, but I couldn't offer them in all integrity. And I certainly couldn't price at the same level that I do for the things that I'm an expert in. And that brings us on to another point, doesn't it? Is, experience is key, but so is transformation. And this is the hard one, I think, because I always say price based on transformation. And people ask me, Jess, what does that mean? And sometimes people get frustrated because pricing based on transformation means looking at both the qualitative and the quantitative results of working with you. That was a lot of tips. But it can be quite a frustrating and challenging way to price, but it is one of the best ways. So when we talk about pricing based on transformation, we're talking about what are the results that somebody is going to get from your coaching. Now, before you hit off to this episode and you're like, well, I can't guarantee they're going to make a certain amount of money, Jess, just like you can. I can't either. And pricing based on transformation is not about how many people can somebody get on their list in the time that they've worked with you. It's not just about those quantitative measures. It's about every area that your program, product, or service is going to affect for that person. So I always put this in cash creation terms. Whenever I look at pricing based on transformation, we talk about cash creation as being a really good example because it is something that, we can give a clear quantitative result on. People buy it because they want to make more money instantly. But it also impacts a lot of areas of people's lives that perhaps they weren't expecting. Confidence around selling. It impacts the relationships that they have at home because they're not stressed over money. It impacts their health and wellness. When you're making more money, you get more time to go to the gym, you get more time to relax, you get more time to sleep because you're not so worried about bills all of the time. And it impacts their business in a completely different way. If you're making more money, you can outsource, you can stress less, you can do less, make more, all of those kinds of things. And so when you're looking at the transformation of your program, regardless of what industry it's in, look at, how is it impacting the key areas of somebody's life? How is it impacting their relationships? How is it impacting their stress levels? How is it impacting their health? How is it impacting their wealth? Those things are really important to people, and it's not to say that your program needs to have like 30 different outcomes. We don't sell cash creation as being, hey, by cash creation, you can make a ton of money and also stop arguing with your spouse and also, stress less about working and also sleep better and also go to the gym more, because people don't want that. They want the ultimate outcome, which is for them at that point in time, I want to make money now. Yeah. Do you see what I mean? So when we're talking about pricing based on transformation, we're not just talking about, what number fits the bill. We're looking at what transformation am I actually going to provide to these people. And in most cases, the transformation, the overall transformation that you'll be providing is priceless. We cannot always put a price on the impact of everything that we are going to do and that somebody can see whilst working with us. But what we can do then from that is knowing all of the positive ways that investment is going to change their lives, is that we feel confident in picking a price that reflects that. Okay, so we're not just charging a premium price because we're like, oh, everyone else is, and it's a 12-week program, and I'm going to have to do this many hours of work, and blah, 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 blah. We sat there and we're listing out what are the actual transformations, what are the actual outcomes this person's going to get, how is that going to impact them? And then we're looking at that objectively and saying, okay, I do think that is worth £1,000 or £1,500 or £2,000 or £5,000 or £10,000 or however much that might be for you. And we're making that decision confidently. We're making that decision from a place of service, of wanting to give a quality experience and wanting to provide a high level of transformation, of support, of accountability based on those outcomes, not based on the time that you're spending doing something. Because charging based on time is a very limited business model. Even if you're and I know that I'm going to have people who are graphic designers and web designers and VAs and people saying, but I have to because that's what my industry does. And it's not. It isn't. Charging based on the time you spend on a project is a very dangerous place to be, because the only competition or the only USP you have is that you might be the quickest to get it done. And then you rip yourself off twice, right? Because you're charging a lower price in the beginning and then you're saying that you're going to get it done quicker. So actually you're getting paid less what somebody else would be and less what you deserve. Whereas when you price based on transformation in any industry, you're pricing based on expertise, you're pricing based on security, you're pricing based on ability, transformation. And those things are more important. It's always really interesting to me when we talk about pricing by the hour. And I always think about my podcast producer, Scott. He's amazing. And I rave about him all of the time. And one of the interesting things about the way that Scott prices or the way that I pay him, I don't know, I'm like an old client. But one of the great things about it is that I pay more. I pay more than I could do to work with Scott than I would for somebody else. There are plenty of people out there who will actually edit podcast audio, do intros, your outros on Fiverr. You can find them for like, I don't know, pennies. But I want to pay Scott more because he does a great job. And because it's not about the hours that he spends on it. You know, some podcast episodes, you know, he probably spends 20 minutes on. Not this one, because I've spent the entire episode sneezing and making lots of noises. So when he's editing it, this one's going to be a long one. But I don't pay him based on the time it takes him to edit the episode. I pay him for all of those other things. The expertise to know how to make each episode sound the very best that it can sound, even when the quality isn't great from myself or from guests. I pay him for the security of knowing that he is always going to make it happen. You know, him and his team, regardless of sometimes how late I get in podcast episodes and I'm like, could you just squeeze this one in? I'm secure in the knowledge that they will always help get it done. That every single week the podcast will be published. Every single week it will be loaded into Libsyn. It will be looked after. Every single week they'll be working on forward episodes. They'll be letting us know about new opportunities in the podcasting space. And I'm paying for the transformation of the fact that I took a podcast from nothing. I had 0 listeners to the thousands of listeners every single month. And that's what I'm paying him for. And every single month when I pay that, you know, by direct debit, I'm happy about that investment. It's an investment to me worth making because it's an investment that has paid off time and time and time again because of that expertise, because of that security, because of that transformation. And that's what we need to start thinking about when we're pricing. You know, we need to think about our experience. We need to think about the transformation we're providing, but also we need to think about our audience. You know, and this is always an interesting one too, because again, the online space seems to have forgotten that, you know, you are, or your services, not you personally in any way, shape or form, but your services or your products are worth what somebody will pay for them. It doesn't matter what you say you're going to charge. When people pay it, then it's real. Up until that point, it's not validated. It's not actually a thing yet. Okay. And so we have to remember this, you know, what can our ideal clients afford? And this is a hard one. And I talk about this quite a lot in my membership. In the Dotties, we have something called the 5K roadmap, because the Dotties is ultimately there for people who are looking to make their first 5K a month. And that's what we aim to do for everybody who's in there, is help them make that first 5K a month. And often the first thing that they do on this roadmap is we talk about clarity. And one of the pieces around clarity that often raises questions is this idea of ideal client. Who is my ideal client? And people, you know, before the Dotties will get very caught up in, you know, what magazines are they reading? What social media platforms are they hanging out on? All this good stuff. Do they wear flip-flops or high heels? Are they a Levi's fan or a Gap fan? There's lots of random stuff that I've seen over the years. And we flip it around in the Dotties. We have certain exercises in there. But one of the things that I say to everybody in the membership is, can that person afford to pay you? Because often people will say, I want to work with insert group of people here who have low disposable income. And so when we look at it and we say, okay, well, can those people afford to pay you? And people say no. Well, then we know that they're not an ideal client, right? And that's not their fault. It's not their fault if they're at an income point that isn't yet right to invest. But they are not an ideal client, because an ideal client, they can pay you. They have the right attitude to work with you. They can pay you. They enjoy working with you. They want to get results, etc., etc., etc. If they can't afford to pay you, then at that point in time, they are not an ideal client. It doesn't mean you never work with them. It doesn't mean you can't give out scholarships. It doesn't mean that you can't do anything that will ever help the people who can't currently afford your premium services. But it's something that we have to think about when it comes to pricing. Are we pricing for our ideal clients, or are we pricing for the people that we'd really love to help when we are at a financial, stable income ourselves? Okay, and this is something that I really struggled with when I started. I wanted to help everyone. It still frustrates me immensely that there are people out there getting terrible sales advice from people who are not qualified to give that advice. And, they're severely damaging people's businesses, people's confidence, people's self-worth. Like, it just gets my goat. But I couldn't help those people in the beginning. I couldn't make a business necessarily helping those people in the beginning because they couldn't pay me. And that's a hard pill to swallow sometimes. Okay. And if you're thinking, but Jess, I need to help these people, like, this is my calling, then you need to look at, do you want a business, or do you need to set up a charitable foundation? Is there a different way? Is there a better way to be helping your people? But we have to think about that. When it comes to pricing, we have to think, who is our ideal client? Are we actually catering to them? Are we pricing to what they can afford, to their stretch targets, to, even in some cases, are we pricing too little so that they look at our stuff and go, oh, I'm really not sure about that. A friend of mine put up a Facebook post the other day about someone was running an experience, and they were saying, oh, they're running this, I think it was an event, maybe an event or a book launch or something, and saying this person, they didn't name names obviously, but this person is running this amazing like luxury event, and it's only going to be like £100. And people are commenting and being like, what? That's not a thing. Like, that's not going to be possible because cost involved and, dubious. And people didn't look at it and go, oh my God, what a steal. That's going to be amazing. They looked at it and were immediately suspicious. So when we're looking at this pricing, we're looking at, can our ideal clients afford you? It's better to be on the money or slightly over their expectations than it is to be lower, because we know that when it's lower, people are suspicious, they are less likely to invest, but also they're less likely, if they do invest, to do the work. They might not be as committed. And we also have to look at, your audience and their level of captivity. This is a controversial one. It's not something I think we see all that often online, but I think it's always valid to discuss it. So we have to look at captive audiences. And what I mean by captive audience is, do they have to buy what you have right then and there? So Sam and I went to Copenhagen over Christmas last year. And when we were coming back, there was a drone strike at Gatwick Airport. So one of the major airports in the UK had been completely shut down because of this airstrike. We knew we had to get back on that day. We could have stayed in a hotel in Copenhagen and been absolutely fine, but we had family things that we wanted to get back for. So we wanted to be back on that particular day. And so we immediately started looking for flights. Now, bear in mind, we found out, I think 9 o'clock in the morning, that the airport was shut, that we weren't going to be able to get back there. At 9:15, when we found out that yes, our flight was indeed completely cancelled, and no, the airline wasn't going to be able to put on any more flights to Gatwick, we started looking for other flights through other airlines going to other airports in the UK. And the prices had gone up exponentially. So we were looking at this, and I think it's British Airways. I actually tweeted about it because I thought it was so appalling. But we were on the websites, and when we finally got back to the UK, I looked at what our flights normally would have cost. And we eventually decided to go with Scandinavian Air, who were, I'm going to say, amazing. They flew us into Heathrow. There was a very nice pilot. It was a great experience. But we looked at British Airways, we looked at Thomson, we looked at lots of different companies. And British Airways in particular had a flight that was normally £56 one way from Copenhagen to London Heathrow, that because they knew that so many people couldn't get back to Gatwick and were having to go to Heathrow or Stansted or other airports, had gone up to over £500 per person for a one-way flight, right? The flight is 2 hours, like less than. £500. It's a huge increase because the audience was captive. They knew people would have to get there or not. And so they were prepared to price hike. When we got back to Gatwick, eventually we ended up flying to Heathrow. We ended up having to cross London with suitcases, nightmare in commuter hour, never do it. But when we got back to Gatwick, we were driving past local hotels on the way home, and they were saying outside, signs were just saying full. As I started to see this BA pricing issue, I started checking the prices of local hotels, and they had shot up from like £90 a room to over £170 a night because the audience was captive. Now, a captive audience happens very, very rarely, all right? It is in these kind of instances. It's the past midnight taxi journeys where they add on some percentages to travel in antisocial hours. It's the captive audience when an airport goes down and people really need to make other flights. It's those kinds of opportunities that are few and far between, but that most businesses will capitalize on in some way, shape or form. And you might not ever get that opportunity. And in all honesty, you might get that opportunity and decide you don't want to take it. There are plenty of companies out there. Again, I will absolutely shout out Scandinavian Air because they were phenomenal, who did not take advantage of that situation in the way that they could have. All right. So, you might decide not to, but you do have to think about when you are pricing, is my audience captive? Do I have something that nobody else has? Final example on that point is where I live in the UK in Southampton. We're very close to the Isle of Wight, and there is a company who operate really the only mode of transport to the Isle of Wight. And as a result, the Isle of Wight has become, or the crossing, the piece of water in between Southampton and the Isle of Wight, which is literally like 12 miles, it's not far, has become the most expensive crossing of water anywhere in the world per square meter, because that company has the monopoly. They have a captive audience. If you live on the island and you want to get off, you are going to have to get on a ferry, on a catamaran, and that's your only mode of transport, unless you've got your own canoe or something. But again, it's led to it becoming the most expensive piece of water to cross anywhere in the world per square meter. So, captive audiences can also be a factor when it comes to pricing, and you get to choose ethically how you want to deal with that scenario if it arises. And then the final thing, when we're talking about pricing, and this is just a minor point, right, is why do we want to price that much? So one of the things that I see a lot is people, they want to make 6 figures, or they want to make multi 6 figures or 7 figures. And so sometimes their pricing goes a little bit wonky because they're so keen to make this particular revenue goal that they, not necessarily thinking about the transformation, the experience, the quality that we've talked about over this episode. Start thinking about why you have these particular revenue goals. I have clients who are incredibly successful people who, regularly take time off, who never work weekends, who go on holiday all the time, who, have a really great work-life balance, who may never make 7 figures or even multi-6 or even care, right? You might be thinking, well, then why are they paying you so much money? No, there are various reasons. They're still making great money. They're having a really great work-life balance. They're doing a lot less in their business and they are making more. They are less stressed, but they're not looking to hit a goal just because somebody else told them that they should. They're happy, they're successful, they are, having a great time with their business, with their life. And in some ways, that's much more important. So when it comes to pricing, yes, be practical, absolutely. If you want to hit a 10K goal, it's much easier to sell 10 things at £1,000 than it is to sell 100 things at a lower price point. It's a sheer economics, it's a volume thing. But you've also got to look at, why do I want to make that money? And start looking at your business goals. Do you really want to make a specific amount of revenue, or are you prioritizing certain life goals at the moment? And again, this episode is not to say do not price your products or services at a premium. I absolutely believe that you should. But I do also want you to take into consideration the really important things that come in and are involved with pricing: quality, expertise, security, transformation. Those things are priceless. Those things will allow you to increase your prices every 3 months until you get to the level that you are happy with, until you get to the level that you are taking clients that you love, that you adore working with, that you can really prioritize and give a great value experience to, whilst truly getting paid for what you are worth. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. If you have, then make sure that you hit me up and let me know how it was for you. I do love hearing from poddies in the inbox. On Friday this week, we have a really cool episode actually coming up with a fellow Jess. So if you're interested in hearing from 2 Jesses, then check out Friday, the 28th of June. How are we here already? 28th of June with Jessica Rhodes from Interview Connections. If you're interested in podcasting or being a guest on podcasts and wondering how you can get on some of the big name podcasts, and if you do, what should you do, then make sure you tune in for that one. As always, if you have any questions for me, if there's anything you need, make sure you get in touch. You can email me, jessica@jessicalorimer.com, and I respond to everything personally. I'll see you in Friday's episode.